This is a vision that I got ending on October 31st, 2023. It starts out with the people of our community standing in a circle with their arms sort of interlocked on each other's shoulders in a tight circle. Inside of the circle is some sort of stone bowl. It reminds me of a bowl that you would crush medicine in or herbs in. One of those bowls, really heavy. It's very, very large. I would say 5 feet wide, possibly, maybe larger. Inside of this bowl was a woman who had just given birth to a son. The son is, how not to be super disrespectful, but isn't the most precious looking child. But anyway, needless to say, she's in there and she's given birth to him. And the liquid inside of this bowl is somewhat like amniotic fluid, plasma, something thicker. It's not quite water. It's a little gray colored. But sloshing around in the water are enemies, beasts, different type of demonic, evil entities. What I see coming next was a snake that kind of came out of the liquid a little bit and opened its mouth. And inside of its body, I was able to travel through what maybe was into the stomach area, and it was kind of a hollowed out space. And what I saw take place was within its stomach, these umbrellas began to rise to the surface of the snake. So slowly, all these umbrellas started to rise to the surface of the stomach on top of maybe the back or something. Just seemed like a just the inner workings of the snake. Anyway, and then I saw on the outside, and I saw that the umbrellas kind of punctured, the top parts of the umbrella kind of punctured through the snake and came out, tearing the snake open, and then the umbrellas still began to rise. And at this point, I could see what the umbrellas were carrying for the most part. Not all was revealed to me, but I believe they're all similar. The very first one I saw was false representations of religion. So they were like different types of statues of worship of different gods, or even the Catholic Mary, Catholic picture of Jesus, stuff like that, that were attached to this umbrella that was rising. Another one I saw a basket, and it was full of fruit, but this fruit was molded. It wasn't fresh, it was old and no good. And then the third basket I saw was a basket full of swords that were lifted and raised. So all of these things were being offered up to the heavens, to the throne, to God the Father, and they hit the bottom. They could not go forward into that realm at all. They actually completely diminished and vanished. They just had no right to be anywhere in that realm, in that kingdom. After this happened, I looked back over to where the child was, and I can see that the water or liquid began to drain out of that bowl, and like the enemies that were in there kind of flopped like a fish, kind of, lost all the ability to do much and kind of died away. At this point, the child is about 2 when I originally saw the child, and then he kind of grows up a little bit at this point, and he has to cut the umbilical cord from the woman, and then the bowl kind of opens up, and the plasma stuff, or the amniotic fluid stuff, kind of pours out. And it's like I said, it's kind of a gray color. It's kind of gross. But a water comes and cleans it up. And it's like a very shallow water, you know, at first. It's just kind of like it's definitely like meant to represent a river. And the water comes and cleans all that liquid away. And the child kind of rises up out of the bowl and comes out into the water and starts to go forward. And at this point, he's about 4 years old, 5, and he's not wearing any clothes. And he starts to walk straight out. The water continues to flow until it becomes sort of like a golden pathway, and set in front of him is like a golden light, like the sun. And he starts to walk forward, keeping focused straight ahead, but also summoning the woman to come with him, and like with his hand saying, "Come on." He didn't talk to her, he just kind of said, "Come on." The state of the woman was not great. She was very much afraid, and she was also not clothed, and she seemed to be somewhat ashamed. She couldn't even stand up straight, like she was kind of hunched over in fear a little bit. But he kind of beckoned her with his hand and then took her hand and brought her along with him. And as I walk forward, they're actually approached by all the things that were in those baskets that rose up. The first thing was this porcelain Jesus who was alive, but a porcelain statue of him. And the man reaches for the boy's hand, and the boy kind of like pulls his hand away and puts his shoulder kind of away from him and like sticks his tongue out. Very childish, very childlike, but does reject it. And continues to walk forward. The next thing is fruit, and it in this place, it was in like a cornucopia, and the fruit came rolling. I was on the ground, and they came rolling at the child, and it was not moldy at this point. It was pretty fresh looking fruit. And he made sure to not touch the fruit with his hands, but he pushed it off of the path with his foot, and he actually protected the woman from. He didn't want her to touch it. I'm not sure she was strong enough to resist it or something. I don't know. But he couldn't, he didn't allow her to touch it. And he kind of held her back and protected her from it touching her. And then he was able to kind of push it off the path with his feet. Then lastly, the swords were here on the path, but they were huge. They were probably the size of a tall building. And they all lined up so that you couldn't really cross over and continue on the path. And so the little boy, he kind of comes and he looks straight up to the top, and I think ponders how he will get through this. But the hand of the Lord comes and lifts the sword up and allows a space for the boy and the woman to go through. And then afterwards he closes it. So they remain on the path, and the sword goes back stuck into the ground to block the path. Once on the other side, the boy tells the woman to stay there. He wants her to stay. And he puts his hands up. He never really speaks to her, but he uses a lot of gestures and hand motions, and is telling her she needs to stay right where she's at. And again, she's still in the same state she's in. Fear. She makes me uncomfortable looking at her. And the boy goes on a little further. And the posture he takes is to kneel down on his face before God. And this posture immediately allows growth, and he becomes a young man. 20s, 30s, I don't know. And he's matured, obviously, and he isn't as bad to look at as he was as a child. And he is covered by what I believe is the Holy Spirit. The color blue, to me, has always represented the Holy Spirit. And as he rises up, he is now clothed in white and purple. He is actually he's the pattern of Jesus. He rises up as the pattern of Jesus. After this, he is able to call the woman to come forward. And he grabs her hand. And she begins a process. As he's holding her hand, you can see that there's a transfer that happens. And it's a blood transfer. And it's coursing through her veins. And it's painful for her. It's not easy, but he doesn't let go. And as he's transferring this blood to her and it's coursing through her veins, she begins to change and she becomes the bride. And she is so full that it actually lifts her up off the ground, and he kind of holds her hand until she, lets go to kind of be lifted up into the air. And she's kind of laid down. Her position changes kind of from standing, lift into the air to lay down. And then light starts coming from every part of her body, from her mouth, her feet, her hands, every part of her body. And this light is like a golden light, but it's eventually consumed and taken over by a white light. And once it's the white light, you can't see her anymore. It's only light. And after she becomes complete light, I believe the man is then consumed by her, taken up into be the same as her and with her. And that was the end of the vision.